Hey, what's up everybody? It's Friday night. I don't know when the video will get loaded, but we are not able to do as much hunting. It's cold. We're going to try to go out this weekend and maybe find some salamanders that come out in the breeding season in January. Something pretty cool to look at, some spotted salamanders, mole salamanders, stuff like that. But in the meantime, I figured I'd make a video. We did one on the best and worst snakes and best and worst turtles for beginners. So I wanted to do one on the best and worst lizards to get as a beginner. Now, disclaimer, I'm not saying that the lizards I talk about in the bad side are bad pets or even bad in general. I'm just saying that I feel like for beginners, they're probably not the best. So don't take it if you own one of these to get offended and think I'm calling them bad pets. I love all lizards, all reptiles and animals, so I think they're all good, but I think for beginners, certain things come better for beginners when they're just getting used to messing with these animals, and you don't want some of these. For instance, not on the list, but you wouldn't want a beginner to have a Komodo dragon. It doesn't make sense. They get way too big, or obviously venomous, and you can't find them legally in the United States anyway for sale. So we're going to start off with the 5 worst lizards that you can get. I'm covering monitors, lizards, geckos, all those. This is the top 5 you don't want to get as a beginner, in my opinion, and I'll explain why. Number 5, Gila monsters and beaded lizards. The reason for that, if you haven't heard of either one of these, is they are venomous to only venomous lizard species in the world. They are not very aggressive, but a bite can cause some serious damage, if not death, especially in bad circumstances. Generally not deadly, but they are venomous nonetheless and can put a hurting on you. So obviously I would say any beginner needs to stay away from those 2 species. Number 5, crocodile monitors. It would be hard for you to get a hold of some of these anyway. Crocodile monitors, I used to see them a lot, imports. Don't see them as much anymore. From what I understand, they're harder to breed than a lot of these other monitors and lizards. So you don't see a lot of captive born in the United States. And the ones you do see are most likely imports. You see a baby and it grows up. Crocodile monitors get huge, I believe over 10 feet. And they're aggressive. They're a little harder to take care of than other monitors. So that is why it's on the list. They're beautiful, I love them, but they are not good for beginners. Not at all. Number 3, excuse me, fits in the same category, the Nile monitor. Now the Nile monitor is a very common monitor in the pet trade. You're likely to see several babies when you go to a show, at least you used to back 5 to 10 years ago. You used to see them all the time, especially imports. They love to import those. And you see a little baby about 12 inches long, but Nile monitors are big monitors. They get 6 foot plus. They're semi-aggressive, not something you want for a beginner, especially the fact that people buy baby snakes, lizard, turtles, and they don't realize how big they get. I've stressed that so many times in other videos. They get big. They're not small animals, and you can Google pictures of them. They get big, Nile monitors. And just the sheer size of them can cause problems. Even if they're non-aggressive, just that size alone can cause damage. Even if they're just trying to climb you and not even trying to hurt you, their claws can, dig into you and cause some damage. So that is another one I would say beginners stay away from. Number 2, one of the most common lizards you hear about in the pet trade, iguanas. Green iguanas. Obviously common in Florida where they are invasive, but they lived there for I think the 60s or maybe even longer than that. So they're thriving in Florida, and they're extremely common in the pet trade. And again, people see them as a baby and they buy them and they think they're adorable, and they grow up. And an iguana can get 6+ feet too, sharp claws and a tail that, man, look, let me tell you, if you've ever held an iguana, when it tail whips you, it will leave a bruise and stings. It's terrible. So again, I think very common in the pet trade, although I would stay clear if I was a beginner. That's a lot more to handle than you probably realize when you're buying a little tiny baby. But number 1 on the do not buy list. And I actually put these backwards. I should have started for number 5 being the number 1, because I actually went from worst to least worst, is chameleons. Chameleons, I like chameleons, love chameleons, but they take a little more husbandry than people really expect. You have to mist them constantly. They are a little, and I'm not saying they're hard to take care of, but compared to some of the other lizards, they're a little worse. And that's why I have them on the do not buy list if you're a beginner. Chameleons, some of the coolest lizards in the world, especially some of the more common ones that you can find on the pet market. But there's so many different species and subspecies. And they're, again, not saying they're not cool pets. I'm just saying for beginners, I would probably stay clear from chameleons. Now, on my top 5 best, and I'm going to go in actual order on this one, but I would say number 5, and I put this on here because if you are looking for a monitor, I would suggest, if you're going to start out with a monitor, get a Savannah monitor. Savannahs are very small monitors, considering that a lot of them get 6, 7, 8 foot plus. They are generally just a little stouter and fatter. They don't get near as big as the other monitors. So if you are wanting to get into monitors, I would say that is one of and the husbandry is very easy on Savannahs. They're very easy to keep. So if you are trying to get a monitor, I would suggest a Savannah be the monitor you start with. They're very common, they're semi-cheap. So if you want to get into monitors, Savannah monitor, in my opinion, is the cheapest and easiest way to get your monitor for a beginner. Number 4, blue-tongued skinks. Really, really cool animals, easy to take care of. The price tag on them have gone up over the years. I remember when they used to, I could get them from an importer for like 20, 30 bucks. Now they're pretty, I believe it's like $200 to $500 a piece. So they're a little more money than a lot of people are willing to pay for them, but blue-tongued skinks are really cool animals, easier to keep than a lot of the other skink species, and that's why I put it on the list, especially for people who like skinks. Number 3, crested geckos. Crested geckos, very common in the pet trade. They're becoming more and more common. I feel like they're, especially for gecko people, really cool geckos. They're really easy to take care of. There's a lot of information online for them because they're so common in the pet trade now that they'd be really nice for a beginner. The husbandry is not too terribly bad on most of this stuff I'm naming. So another good type of lizard. None of the lizards I named on the best list are very big. So you ain't got to worry about a crested gecko getting, needing a 50-gallon aquarium. They're nice, small lizards. Or geckos, technically, but it is a lizard. And number 2, bearded dragons. Bearded dragon is probably the second most common lizard in the pet trade. So you can get them fairly cheap, and they come in different morphs if you're into that morph thing. You can get all types of varieties of them, from red to lemon. I think they got. Never followed much of the morphs too much, but I know they have a bunch of morphs. So if you're into bearded dragons make good pets. They're easy to take care of. You can find them pretty easily and pretty cheap if you're buying just a normal. So that's why I added it to the list. I think bearded dragons make good pets, especially for beginners. The number 1 lizard for beginners, and this is all opinionated, there's plenty out there, don't get upset if I don't call the one you like, but the leopard gecko. Leopard gecko is extremely common, especially now. I'd say over the last 10 years they just went like skyrocketed. Now they've got all kinds of morphs out there. You can find them everywhere. They're really, really cool lizards to take care of, or geckos. They're really easy to take care of. You can look online, you can find a whole bunch of information on them. If you're into geckos and stuff like that, I would really suggest looking into leopard geckos, especially for beginners. Now this is my list, and it's, like I said guys, a lot of it's opinionated just because I've worked with a lot of the stuff before. I kind of know what I'm getting into, because I'm the type of person, it used to be at least, I used to go to shows and I used to vend shows. And I was always fascinated with the cool stuff that you don't see very often. Tentacle snakes, black throat monitors, white throat monitors, all the stuff that was not very common. And I learned quick at a young age that a lot of this stuff is not common for a very good reason. And that reason is you don't find them. Some of it's law restrictive, you know. You don't find a lot of Australian species here like black-headed pythons and stuff like that because they stopped importing that stuff legally. Fly river turtles, that's all a legal issue with importing it all. But a lot of this stuff, the reason you don't see it very much is because it's very difficult to keep and breed. A lot of the stuff doesn't want to live. It's very hard to keep. The husbandry is bad. Sometimes you can have perfect husbandry and these things just die, different species. So the reason I say some of this stuff is time tested, like you have some of these animals that everybody knows are easy to keep and take care of, and those are the ones I kind of wanted to list. Some of this stuff is a little harder to find, and there's normally a reason it's harder to find, because they've been importing this stuff forever. So somebody would have taken them and started breeding them, but they find out quickly that a lot of this stuff's not so easy to take care of or breed. So that was kind of my list, just trying to make a little video to keep it out there, and hopefully that does give you a little bit of information. If you have any questions, let us know, like in the comments, or tell us in the comments what you think. Also, like and subscribe if you like the video. I will say this again, just because I don't want to hurt anybody's feelings or get anybody getting upset. All lizards are cool, love them all. I've had so many different types over the years, especially with vending shows and all. I'm just giving a list for the basics of what might be good for a beginner. I'm not saying that any of these are bad, like chameleons. I love chameleons. I think chameleons are great. But if you are getting one of them, just know that it's going to be a little more difficult to take care of some of these things. Or do your research is the main thing, because a lot of, like, that's the biggest thing I've always talked about. People don't do their research. They buy something small, don't think it's going to get that big, and then, you know, a 100-gallon aquarium later, they realize that this is too much, or their outdoor enclosure that takes up half their house, they realize it's too much for them. So do your research. Don't just grab something and think it's going to eat this and do this and you're going to get away with it. Just, you know, do your research. If you have any questions, if I've owned it or know what it is, then I will be glad to help you with what I know. If not, I'm sure I know somebody who does know about it. So, yeah, thank you for watching.